Everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have an update to share about one of Trump's capital terrorists. It's time for an episode of Where Are They Now?
Matthew Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
So Brandon Fellows, you will definitely remember this guy. Fellows is the probably 27-year-old man at this point. He's from New York. He had been indicted on a charge of obstruction of an official proceeding, as well as the typical 4 misdemeanors that most of these people have been hit with. And he infamously bragged about his Bumble dating app blowing up after news had broke about his involvement in the Capitol attack. So this is also the man who got himself thrown back in jail recently after being out on bond for several months because he refused to undergo the court-ordered health evaluation, mental health evaluation. He also thought it was a bright idea to try to intimidate his probation officer by locating and then contacting her mother. And then after being remanded back to jail, Fellows decided that he wanted to represent himself in court. So another stable genius. And this is where this new update picks up. The judge recently and reluctantly agreed to allow Fellows to act as his own legal counsel. And he had an actual attorney on standby to provide advice, to give him feedback and so forth. Well, to say that this isn't working out the way that Fellows had hoped is an understatement, because on his very first day cosplaying as an attorney, he implicated himself in 2 new felonies. Here's the deal. Fellows went before the judge. It was Judge McFadden. And he once again was asking to be released. He wants to be released from jail to wait for his trial outside of jail, which is odd because this is the guy who basically laughed about being arrested. And he said that the feds would be doing him a favor by putting him in jail because at least he would have a place to live and he'd have food, and that was more than he already had, which I found was funny because he supported Trump. And it was like, okay, well, what did Trump do for you that you're such a big supporter? So, because remember, this is the guy who was living in a converted school bus on January 6th when he attacked the Capitol for Trump. So for some reason, this guy who supported the president, who did nothing for him in 4 years in office, didn't make his life any better, he was so stoked to be going to jail because it would give him so much more in his life to look forward to. And now he's fighting to be released. Yeah, like I said, there's no Bumble in jail. Didn't know if he knew that. There's no females there. So here's what went down in this hearing where he was trying to get himself released. First, Fellows tried to call as a witness his former public defender, a woman named Kara Halverson, or Kara Halverson. I'm not sure how she pronounces it. Well, the judge refused to allow Halverson as a witness. So Fellows then said, well, I want to take the stand myself. Now, McFadden warned against it. Judge McFadden told Fellows, look, it's unlikely I'm going to release you. It's unlikely I'm going to grant you pretrial release. And in you taking the stand, you're opening yourself up to possibly a perjury charge, obstruction of justice charge. This is not a good idea. Nevertheless, Fellows wanted to do it, so the judge allowed it, and it could not have gone better for the prosecutors. During Fellows' testimony, first off, he described a conversation that he said he had with his former public defender, Halverson. And he claims that he recorded this conversation. So there could be actual evidence out there. There could be a recording of this. Keep that in mind as I tell you what happened. So during this alleged conversation, Fellows said that he told Halverson that he found a legal loophole that would allow him to remove Judge McFadden from his case. Fellows asked her, he asked Halverson if he should contact the judge's family so that the courts would be basically required, dictated to remove him from Fellows' case. And then Fellows admitted that Halverson said, no, you don't want to do that. He admitted on the witness stand that Halverson told him, if you take that action, you could get in even more trouble. It could result in greater charges being filed against you. Do not do that. It's illegal. So Fellows tried to explain these criminal ideas that he had by saying, quote, when I'm worried, I don't make the most understandable decisions. Now, in the midst of all this, Fellows also admitted to previously using the phone number of a judge's wife as his emergency contact on court documents to get that judge thrown off of a case in which he was a defendant. So I mentioned this before. I think this was the case in which he was in trouble because for stalking or something like that. There was something involving an ex-girlfriend, and I think she filed a restraining order against him, and I think he violated that. But anyway, if I'm remembering it correctly, this is the case that he's referring to. So we knew about this. This was reported on, but he actually admitted to it with his own mouth in a court of law under oath on the witness stand. Then apparently Fellows just rambled on, according to journalists who were there in the room or on the call, whatever the case was. He just rambled on for almost 2 hours. He was talking about how he didn't like the jail and just random shit. The reporters who were there said that he complained about his incarceration. And then he also touched on subjects like the Taliban, Guantanamo Bay. He talked about a woman who left her baby in a dumpster. And then he mentioned a constitutional lawyer who allegedly advised him to wrap his cell phone in foil to avoid capture. And there was a high school book report that he wrote that he brought up. And it was about positive policing in Canada. I'm telling you, these are getting more like the GTFO segments every day. And at one point, Fellows said that an NSA man, that was a direct quote, filed ex parte charges against him. So the judge said, no, there are no charges filed against you by anyone from the NSA. And then Fellows said, quote, oh, he hasn't? Well, I'll move on then. What the hell? So Fellows also claimed that he didn't know on January 6th what was going on at the Capitol until he got home and saw on the news that he was on the news. And so he told the judge that in regard to how he felt prosecutors treated him after his arrest, he said, quote, I kind of feel like I was a battered wife in training. Really? And he described the prosecutor's treatment of him as, quote, abuse. Yeah, really? Really? They were slapping you around there, Fellows? So he also said, quote, I'm a little socially awkward because of, I don't want to say disorders, because I don't like to get privilege points for them. And then he also apparently started rambling about his ex-girlfriends and how one of them recently, or I guess it was last year, lit his clothes on fire. Gee, what could have made her want to do that? Anyway, because Fellows willingly testified, it granted the prosecutors the ability to cross-examine him. I don't know if he thought that one through. And so that's when it got even worse for him, because under oath, prosecutors got Fellows to admit that he did enter the Capitol through a broken window. And then when they asked him, quote, "Who told you you could climb through the window?" Fellows replied, quote, "That would be the crowd." Yeah, not really the police like he initially claimed. So then the prosecutor said, quote, "So you're basically saying that because the officers didn't come up to you and become violent, that you assumed it was okay to climb through the window?" And Fellows answered, quote, "Yes, that seemed to me to be what was going on." So after almost 2 hours, like I said, of him rambling and implicating himself in new crimes, Judge McFadden just said, "Sorry, no, you're going back to jail." Actually, he said, quote, "You are charged with a federal felony. This is not a community college where you get pats on the back." Whatever that means. I mean, this Judge McFadden is another whole story. He's a Trump appointee. He likens these January 6th defendants to BLM protesters. But anyway, so, what the hell community college has to do is if people at community college don't work hard, don't earn their education. I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, he went on to say, quote, "What speaks most saliently and loudly is your conduct in post-arrest pretrial status, where you repeatedly failed to follow the conditions of release. I've listened to your explanations, and I think Miss First is right. These are excuses." So First, as you may have guessed, is the prosecutor. And then McFadden said, quote, "You've admitted to incredible lapses of judgment here on the stand, not least of which was seeking to disqualify a New York State judge. You've admitted to obstruction of justice in that case, and you admitted to what was probably obstruction of justice in this case in trying to get me disqualified. And only Miss Halverson's advice stopped you from doing so. You've engaged in a pattern of behaviors that shows contempt for the criminal justice system, and I just have no confidence that you will follow my orders if I release you." So with that, Judge McFadden ordered him back to jail to await trial. And here's my question. Like I said, McFadden was appointed by Trump. And like I also said, he recently likened the January 6th domestic terrorists to BLM protesters. So he's not in any way, shape, or form some liberal judge. So why is Fellows trying to get him tossed from the case? Is he just trying to drag things on? I don't get it. But, clearly it doesn't take Sigmund Freud. I mean, I'm no expert, but it doesn't take an expert like Freud to realize that this guy has some serious issues and they're not going to be solved in jail or in prison. He needs mental health treatment. So whatever comes down the pike, whatever happens with all of this, I hope that they recognize that and they don't just throw him into a prison where he's not going to get the help or the medication or whatever it is that he needs. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted. As always, thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. I'll talk with you soon.